Hello and welcome to another episode of Drink to a Decade, where today we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of one of the most perfect movies of all time, Ghostbusters. What do you want? I am your spectacular, amazing, I messed up my own name, host with the most, Detective Artemis, and I am here with...
Damn, that's a long breath. I'm Journey.
And I am old buddy Ben Cleaver. Hey everybody, what's going on?
How's it going, guys? Today we are talking about Ghostbusters. It's been 40 years.
God damn, I'm old.
Yes, you are. Almost
older
half a
than you
century. You are literally turning 40 years old
I
this
am
year.
the same age as this movie.
Wow.
We need a whole episode on you, sir.
Oh, we could do that.
Oh, that would feed into my ego.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We
Let's
love
talk
that.
about Ben Cleaver for an hour.
We'll feed there you go. We love it.
And everybody's like, who the hell is Ben Cleaver?
Yes, and then just you get a whole IMDb page like boost, and there you go. And then
my
you
star meter goes off the charts.
yeah, and then we get residuals from that.
Hell yeah. Wait, how do we get residuals off of an IMDb page?
We don't understand business.
Right?
What is business?
It is not our business. Ben, what are some of your earliest memories of Ghostbusters?
Oh man, I'd say the first thing that sticks into my mind as a child is the opening scene with the librarian.
Ooh.
And when she turns into a big old scary ghost. Mostly because I grew up in a little town in Kansas, and in the neighboring town over, it's called Hutchinson, Kansas. And not a whole lot of people know about Hutchinson, but it is famous for one thing. They have extensive salt mines under the city.
Uh-oh.
And they have been used for many years now to store all kinds of stuff, because it's like a temperature and humidity controlled environment. It's I don't know, it's like 500 feet under the surface or something. Or
It sounds scary, but
yeah.
doesn't salt repel ghosts?
Well, hold on. This is just a fun fact about Hutchinson and its connection to everything else, is that, they store like old film reels. Like, I think for at least a while, maybe it's still down there, but like the original film reel of Gone with the Wind was down there. And the dress from Wizard of Oz and the ruby slippers were down there for a while. They use it to store like old shit, right? But in Hutchinson, there's a public library, and it used to be haunted by a ghost of an old librarian. Oh, probably still is haunted by a ghost of a librarian.
Wow.
Named Ida Day, I think that was her name. And so I grew up kind of hearing about this legend of this public library that was ghosted or haunted by the ghost of an old librarian.
Yeah.
And that's what my mind connected to when I saw the opening scene of Ghostbusters.
Is it inspired by that?
I don't think so, but that's just what I connected it to.
It's
as a
still
kid.
pretty cool.
I mean, I don't think you have to go too far across this country to get a legend of an old librarian haunting a library. I don't think that's super unique to Hutchinson, Kansas, but that is why that impacted me so much as a little kid, is because I thought, oh, that's what the Hutchinson Public Library ghost is like.
Yeah.
And so that always stuck in my mind.
Did you ever go back to the library?
Oh, I haven't been to that library in 25 years or so.
But I mean, after you watched the movie, did you go to the library?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I did. I didn't go to that one a lot because, like I said, it was the next town over, and in my little tiny town I grew up in, we had our own library, but I usually just got books from my school library.
I mean, I would visit something like that. Yeah,
For sure. Walking around and being shushed by some ghost who turns
Right.
into a very scary creature.
But yeah, and I think that's a great way to start off the movie. Like,
yeah,
and I think that was something really neat. The ghosts in Ghostbusters have their own look.
yeah.
Really like translucent, but like also like it's weird.
But
It's hard
even
to explain.
Translucent and gooey.
Even just the character design of all of them, they're all different, but they all look after the same style. And it's this weird, creepy, not quite like Poltergeist, but kind of in that same vein with the weird limbs and,
Yeah.
And also, this was around the time that there was no actual computer animation. This was practical, but also,
I mean, it was like a combination
early
of
stages of like CGI.
Yeah, it was kind of a combination of like practical blue screen puppetry and stop motion
like-
animation type stuff.
yeah, it was super cool.
pretty ahead of its time in its special effects for sure.
Absolutely. Like growing up for me, like when it came to that movie, it was one, the soundtrack, epic.
Of course.
Amazing. Loved it. I was stuck with the music forever. And then also marshmallows. I cannot eat marshmallows after
To this day.
after this. I don't like marshmallows.
I love marshmallows.
I don't.
I will
they're
never
weird.
stop eating them.
They're weird for me.
You're eating marshmallows right now.
Shut up.
That
What are some of
Chubby
your
bunny.
what are some of your early memories?
was it. Yeah, that
was
was
it? Okay.
Yeah, the soundtrack and marshmallows. I can't do marshmallows anymore. They're just satanic to me. Like,
Hail Satan.
no, like
Hail
what's
Satan.
what's going to destroy the world? Marshmallows.
Yeah.
I couldn't help it. it just popped in my head.
Just popped in my head.
It's such a
What
great.
popped in your head?
Yeah.
One of the most quotable movies for sure.
Absolutely.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I think the Marshmallow Man, that whole like the last scenes, it's one of like my earliest memories of it. And then playing the original games on like Nintendo, like on the NES. Those games are super hard.
Yeah. Also for the fucking longest, I was sure that the Michelin tire guy was the Stay Puft. Like I was like, hey, look, it's Ghostbusters.
You can't tell me there's not a connection.
There's a connection.
It's probably his cousin or something.
Yeah.
They got to be related.
Well, I'm sure that because the Stay Puft Marshmallows is not a real brand. You know, that's not a brand that exists in real life. So
Yeah,
Didn't they
I knew
try?
that.
Didn't they try making that?
they
a brand
might have, but it
afterwards?
was after the movie. It was from the movie
From the
that they
movie.
did it
Okay,
because
see, I thought it was real.
no, they made it up for the movie, and I'm sure that the Marshmallow Man was inspired by the Michelin Man. And the reason the Michelin Man is white is because tires initially, when they started making them, the end of production, the tire was white, and they had to actually color it to make it black.
for the road, right? The asphalt and everything.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think that's why I think tires had white walls originally on them, because they
Yeah.
just colored the tread, because otherwise you get this really weird looking discoloration on the tires as they drove down the road, and I think it was off-putting, so they started coloring them black.
I did not know that. I always
Yeah.
assumed that white wall was like a style
Like
preference.
added on,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was like a style preference. I
Now,
assumed that.
I don't know if that's how tire production works anymore, but originally when they started making them for like the Model T and all that kind of stuff, they came out white and they started coloring them black. And so that's why the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, I almost said. That's why the Michelin Man
Michelin
is
Man.
white. He's made of tires.
Same person.
And they're all white.
That's cool.
Interesting. Now, is this the same Michelin that does the Michelin stars that they give to restaurants?
Yes.
Ironically, yes.
I was like, I just learned
What
that
a
like as an
weird-
adult just a few years ago. That
Did you guys know the story about that, or like why they're
I
connected?
do.
I know
I know
a
you
little
do,
I
Ben.
know a little bit of it, but you know the full thing. Go for it.
So it kind of sprung up, as I understand it, and I may be somewhat inaccurate on this, but from what I've gathered and read, it is, like when
Pit stops, right?
when the US started converting to the freeway system, and you had like
Yeah.
Route 66, and people after World War II were actually going on trips across the country.
Yeah.
Of course, this was big business for the tire industry.
Yeah, that's how I learned it too.
And
yeah.
Michelin was one of the big producers, obviously still is. And they wanted to kind of partner with places people could go. You had a destination that you could go to. And so they would say, hey, if we're really impressed with your restaurant, we'll give you an endorsement
Mhm.
with a Michelin star. And so it is literally the tire company. When you think of a Michelin star restaurant, it originated with the tire company. They would grant this promotion to different restaurants across the country,
Yeah.
inspiring people or encouraging people to stop at restaurants because they were promoted by Michelin Tires, which was making the tires that they were putting on their cars to drive themselves to these restaurants. And it expanded from there, and now you get Michelin star restaurants all over the world.
And that was also tied in with road maps too, right?
Yeah.
Road maps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody had a map in their glove box, and like and then it had the little pit stops there that you can take where you can get gas, where you can get something to eat.
Brilliant marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
then-
for the record, you cannot eat a tire.
I suppose you could
I've
physically eat a
seen-
tire.
I've seen people try.
I don't think you should eat a tire.
What do you
How
do
did you-
with an old tire?
You put it in the Springfield tire fire.
No,
Absolutely,
no,
yeah,
you
you just
retire it.
Wow.
Go to hell.
I'm already here.
You go to hell.
Actually, you
go to hell and die.
You should take it to an auto mechanic or a tire shop where they will charge you money to dispose of it.
Yeah, I'll just turn into a sweet swing.
Yeah.
Oh,
turn
yeah,
it into a tire swing, man. Absolutely.
Go down a hill, whatever.
Although it does seem very... I've never been on a tire swing. Never been, but it looks very uncomfortable. Have you guys ever?
I've done a tire swing. I don't.
Have you?
When I was a kid,
don't really
there's
see
two
many
kinds
around here.
There's the vertical where it's just hanging vertically from the rope, and then there's the one where they actually put some effort into it and it's suspended
Tilted.
horizontally, and you
Oh.
can kind of sit in it like an inner tube, also from a tire. Those are more fun. The tire swings that are vertical that you just sit in, a little uncomfortable. But it's all very hard rubber, so it's all somewhat uncomfortable.
Give you a hard rubber.
Oh,
Thank you for that.
that's just awkward.
So what are some of your favorite scenes from Ghostbusters Journey?
Favorite scenes? Definitely when he gets slimed.
He slimed me.
He slimed
Can
me.
you move?
and then he's like, hey, save some for me. Like, I love that. Like, that's. But honestly, just the banter between all of them. That was just my favorite. Like, and Bill Murray. Like, just Bill Murray.
So good.
God damn that guy. Even though I know he's an asshole, like, it's just the person he is.
I don't think is he an asshole?
I've
I think
heard-
he's just a grumpy old man at this point.
At this
I'm already
point,
there.
but I've heard that like he's really difficult to work with because it's just he's gonna be him. He's gonna do his thing, and you let him do his thing, and there's no changing it. And
Well, I chalk up to him just being a weird, creative comedian genius.
exactly.
And that you get weird with genius comes weirdo-ness.
But from what I've heard is there's no working with him. It's more
his
like
show.
It's his show.
Yeah.
You bring him on, he does his show, and you let him do his thing. If you try to change anything, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Was he banging that girl who sang "My Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard"? Wasn't he dating her for a minute?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I neither do I know the song.
I think they were banging for a minute.
I'm pretty sure he banged.
Intern?
I'm pretty sure he banged a lot of things.
I mean, good
But
for
that's
him.
just a random pairing.
That is a very random pairing.
While the intern looks this up, Ben, can you
Yeah.
tell me some of your favorite scenes?
Absolutely.
Well, definitely the Slimer scene in the hotel
Yes.
is great. And I want to talk a little bit about shooting locations too.
Ooh, yes.
Here in a little bit. I'm sure you've got that on the list, Detective. But there's that. Let's see. Of course, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man scene is pretty great. Just seeing, the Godzilla King Kong style walking through the buildings and destroying shit.
Yeah.
The cool things about like when Dana, the first time she opens her fridge and sees the stairway
universe,
in there, and then the next time when she's sitting in the chair and the hands come out and grab her and pull her back into the fridge.
Yeah.
Is cool.
The eggs popping.
Out. Yeah, that's cool. And I think it's handled, even though it's this bizarre comedy, it's handled in a way like Sigourney Weaver is so good in just handling it like a fucking real person. Like if this started happening to you, that's what you would do.
Yeah.
And again, like you were talking about the banter, just like when Bill Murray goes over and she's embodied the gatekeeper or whatever.
Oh, the gatekeeper, yeah.
And
I'm the keymaster.
Yeah. And she's like, "Are you the keymaster?" He's like, "No." She slams the door and he knocks again. She's like, "Are you the keymaster?" Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
And then he goes in and then she's like hovering above the bed when she's laying there.
Yeah.
And then later he goes, "I like her because she sleeps above her covers."
Yeah.
3 feet above her covers,
And that's another thing. I love how like they actually do bring in a lot of the paranormal aspect of it. Like you have your poltergeist, you have your ghosts who kind of repeat apparitions. Right. You have the ones that I forgot what the term was, the one where they just repeat themselves over and over again. Like they have all those real aspects of what the paranormal field is like, and they introduce that into it. It's like it felt like legit.
And one thing I really like about this movie is it's kind of no holds barred in that it's a comedy. It's come up by it, it was dreamed up by a bunch of guys from Saturday Night Live, basically.
Ooh, really?
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and originally they were supposed to have John Belushi in there. Jim Belushi's still alive. John Belushi, and then I think he passed before they started filming. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And And so, but it was all these comedy guys that came up with this concept, but it doesn't back off on the horror aspect of it. Like there is some truly scary shit in this movie, especially in 1984. Balance. Like we wouldn't have the scary shit that we have today without Ghostbusters and Poltergeist and these movies from the late 70s and early 80s that came out that were really exploring what can you do with the idea of supernatural and special effects in a movie.
Yeah, I love how in the Exorcist, I remember I watched this YouTube video where they showed them premiering Exorcist and people were literally throwing up in the theater.
Yeah.
Because of how scary and crazy it was.
You don't get that
anymore. It was revolutionary for its time.
We're so desensitized, I think, to so much of that. You can't respond to like you can't get people to respond to a movie like that anymore because with the basically endless amount of special effects that we can do and that we've been exposed to over the last 30 years, there's nothing that you can really shock people with in that way anymore. Well, now it's got to be content, like the content of it has got to be shocking and people are just doing that for bullshit reasons.
True, but I feel like the only like true horror that they're putting out right now is like real life horror, which is humans are the scariest.
Yeah.
See, I think it was a good balance of horror and comedy.
Exactly.
I think it was a comedy with horror in it. And then you have movies like Return of the Living Dead, which is a horror with comedy in it. So I think those are really cool. And they really help revolutionize, different kinds of modernized horror. So a lot of credit to Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Artie, my boy, what's your favorite?
Oh, well, thank you for asking, sir.
Of course. We haven't forgotten about you.
So let's see. Pretty much anything with Egon. Egon is my favorite. Yes. I love his dry sense of humor. The late Harold Ramis is so cool. He never smiled in any of the scenes. That was cool. He's like, I collect spores, molds, and fungus. Just everything he said was great. And I like this part where they're like where the keymaster gets out of the ambulance. And then he's like, he's one of you guys? And he puts like the PK meter on him. He's like, all right, let's bring him in. Cause like it was going off.
Yeah. Doesn't the secretary end up flirting with him?
Yeah. Janine definitely wanted some Egon. But then for whatever reason, she was with Lewis in part 2.
It's called desperation.
It was a whole different thing. But we'll get to the sequels in a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's like Egon was like asexual. He was like an asexual person. Whereas to balance it out, Bill Murray's character was hypersexual.
Yeah. How did he have sedatives with them to like put Dana to sleep? Like,
you know why?
He had some
There's
plans.
some shady shit about
well, no, he was an actual doctor, wasn't he?
Parapsychologist.
Well, he was a parapsychologist, so he wasn't a medical doctor, no.
No.
So he went over there to Dana's apartment for their date, and he just happened to have sedatives on him.
Yeah.
Now, I will say technically a psychologist... No, a psychiatrist has a medical degree. A psychologist does not. So no reason for that.
I also love how Bill Murray during that one scene, he was like shocking the guy, like kept shocking him.
Oh yeah.
Well, the hot one was like, "Oh no, you're great.
She was absolutely wrong.
And then he actually got it right one time, and he's like, "Nope, I'm sorry."
That's I mean, and that's in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and that's the first like problematic sign. From. What's his name?
How do we take this guy seriously?
What's Bill Murray's character's name?
Venkman.
Venkman.
Peter Venkman.
And that's the first sign that Venkman's like a problematic character.
From rapey.
Looking at it from today's perspective, definitely. Back then, I think in '84, it was like, he's just like a funny ladies guy.
Blah, blah, Pepe Le Pew over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure all the girls fell for it.
Yeah. So that's, but again, like we talked about in one of our other shows, it's, you have to use discretion when consuming content from a prior decade.
Right.
Discretion.
Another thing I like too is where Ray, Dan Aykroyd's character, he gets that dream and he's getting that ghost blowjob.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing that like, there's some dirty shit in this movie.
We've all dreamt about it before.
I mean,
all right, maybe not.
You probably have.
Yeah. I would say I'm maybe not.
To this day, the effect where they undo his belt like invisibly, that was actually, it still looks pretty cool.
Yeah. They did it effectively. That's the thing about practical effects. Like, what was it on the Con Guy podcast, to plug another show? We talked about one of our hosts, Danae, was talking about, it's called the Jim Henson effect. Like, practical effects are always going to look good.
Yeah.
And CGI is going to look kind of bad after a couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Like CGI from 2 years ago is always going to look like CGI from 2 years ago, but practical effects are always going to be real life stuff that happened on camera.
Okay, explain to me Starship Troopers. That CGI still.
That's one of those rare examples of it
Wait,
still
there you
holding
go.
up.
Still holds up. Still great till this day.
My
Probably
boy.
barely aging.
My boy Casper Van Dien.
Yeah.
Oh damn.
That man's jaw was chiseled by Michelangelo himself.
I'm
The
sure.
fucking Roblox jawline.
Jeez. But yeah. So yeah, I think that's the thing is, again, it was 1984. They were using.
I love practicals. Like,
They were using practical effects for
that's why
the
I was.
majority of it.
That's why I was so happy.
It's cheaper too.
Yeah, that's why I was so
True.
happy when Dark Crystal came back on Netflix and they brought back
Yeah.
practicals. I was like, I love that show so much, and I do. It's but I don't know what's. I don't do the business side of like Hollywood, but like, what isn't practical still supposed to be a lot cheaper than CGI?
Yes.
Yeah, but you need more people is the thing,
Um,
and you got to pay people for their labor hours.
Do you have to pay them?
And there are, and
It's-
here you want some truth? You want some truth on this?
Yes.
Give me the tea.
Practical effects is more labor intensive and takes longer, give or take. And those workers, those artists, and they are artists, are unionized.
Okay.
And whereas it was up until at least recently, CGI and computer animation artists were not unionized. And that is one reason why Disney...
You gotta outsource that shit.
Yeah, when Disney, for their feature films, switched from 2D animation to 3D animation, it was because the 2D animation artists were unionized and the 3D animation artists were not. And that's why we started getting like Tangled and all these other films that were 3D animation,
Yeah.
as opposed to Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin or Lion King, which were all hand-drawn animation. Even if it is digital, it's still hand-drawn because those artists were unionized and they're more expensive than non-unionized artists.
And that's the problem because like I said, outsourcing. It's like you have a lot of people from other countries making all these designs and 3D designs, and that's like, and they're doing it for cheaper, and it's
Just
a lot
log
cheaper.
on to Upwork, man.
Yeah. and also, but that's the thing though. It's like practical stuff that actually really takes a good mastering of. That's the stuff that lasts even longer.
That's what I'm saying. That's the Jim Henson effect. Practical effects are always going to look good. Practical effects are always going to look like good practical effects, and CGI from 2 years ago is always going to look like CGI from 2 years ago.
Yeah. Mastery lasts decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuff like little stuff that gets consumed and tossed away, like 3D stuff, CGI, it doesn't. Like, well, sometimes it does, but.
Well, and that's part of why the original Jurassic Park holds up so well because they
beautiful
used,
blend.
Yeah, they used CGI extremely sparingly in that movie. Most of the dinosaur shots, the majority of shots of dinosaurs in that movie are practical effects, the puppetry and robotics. They used CGI very sparingly for like full body shots of dinosaurs. But outside of that, a lot of it was practical, and it's that blending, exactly what you said, Detective, that makes it stand up, because when they're just throwing everything out there as CGI, you get desensitized to it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's another reason why it holds up so well. You know, it's like it's a classic. And with Ghostbusters, it's like just a really good blend as well in terms of like genre and from a technical aspect as well. And even the characters too, the way the story builds up, they start off getting kicked out of the college, and you see them sort of build up, and you don't really see them in the Act 1 until like about 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool build up to their characters, you know, they're pretty much their whole arc.
Yeah. So saying all that, I'm going to state that I don't think there's anything in this movie that I don't like.
That was going to be my next question. Are there any moments you don't like about this movie? My answer is no. I love every second of it.
Every second of it. All of it.
And
Great.
they do such a good job because at the time this was a brand new
Concept.
intellectual property. It was a brand new brand. And so they did it right by saying, oh, here's how these guys, it's an origin story,
Exactly.
but they didn't waste time on it being an origin story. They're like, okay, the first act is going to be how they get there. And then the second and third act are going to be their issues that they have to solve with ghosts, etc. And so, you know, them getting a hearse to be their emergency vehicle.
It was an ambulance.
It was a really old style
Was it?
ambulance.
It was an ambulance.
Yeah,
Was
it was
it an
an
ambulance?
There's
But-
sirens on there.
But a
Yeah, I guess
really
so.
Hers
old
was
ambulance.
the 2016 one.
That was
Pretty
2016 was a horse. Okay.
You know what? You're right.
Okay.
I'm a
so,
doofus.
So I'm terrible at like a name. Oh, so what are all 4 characters' names? Venkman,
Ray, Egon, and
Egon,
Winston.
and
Winston.
And
And what's okay? So I don't remember very clearly, but what was so there was a thing about Winston, right? Because he was brought in late. He didn't get the biggest role of it all, but but I remember there was like some backstory between that.
Yeah,
right?
so apparently they wanted Eddie Murphy to be Winston.
That would have been interesting.
And at the end, he ended up not doing it because he was doing Beverly Hills Cop instead, which is also a 40th anniversary this year. And so at the last second, they told Ernie Hudson, like, okay, you know, instead of your character going to be like a big part of it, he's just going to show up halfway through. So he kind of got screwed in that aspect, but he was kind of always like a last minute replacement for Eddie Murphy.
But he was such a team player.
Winston was so cool.
Winston is a great character because
I love Ernie Hudson.
Yeah, he acts as the conduit for the audience.
Yes, he's an audience insert.
He's the everyman. He's not a scientist. He's not a doctor.
He even says, as long as you pay me, I'll believe whatever you want.
And I love that.
and so he comes in as the audience insert, as you said, to be the guy that's like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
And that gives then the writer an excuse to provide exposition through the characters of the professional doctor, quote unquote, guys, to the everyman, which is Ernie Hudson.
Yeah.
To explain to the audience what's going on without it being forced.
And he was so open to all of it.
Yeah.
He was so open to it. And I really did like his character, even though like wasn't, again, like you said, not a doctor, not part of it. He was the everyman. And that's why I liked him kind of like the most. Like, I mean, well, not my favorite, because obviously his character didn't get as much development or like spotlight, but he was still great.
And it was cool because he made like all 4 of them like complete their own uniqueness of their characters.
Yes.
Right? It was a good balance.
Good balance.
And there's some criticism, again, looking at it through a modern lens, there's the criticism you can lobby at it is like, oh, you know, the one black guy doesn't get as much screen time.
Right.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the idiot. He's the one that's not a doctor. But I think the flip side of that is he becomes the everyman again for the audience. And that's a great role to have in the whole story, in the whole picture of the story. Is he is the conduit for the audience, and it is a black man, and it is the guy who is representing us in the story.
So let me ask you guys, what would this movie be like if there was no fourth, if there was no Winston? Can you imagine a movie like that?
The dynamic would have been off.
Yeah,
would it?
We have a tease of it like in the first half of it.
Yeah.
And it's good, but then when he comes in, it's better.
When Ernie comes in, he elevates everything.
Exactly.
When Winston comes in, he elevates the whole thing because he completes that circle. You know, we had these 3, you know.
Because it's like you'll see it in a lot of things, like the 3 Musketeers. Like 3 is a good solid number. But yeah, adding
with
a
the 3 Musketeers, there's the 4th. There's the 3 Musketeers, and then isn't it D'Artagnan is the 4th one that comes in?
It's been a while since.
Which one is the candy bar?
That's the candy bar is the candy bar.
Okay, never mind. It's written by some dumbass anyway, right? What was the writer's name?
I don't know.
It's something Dumas. It was a joke. It said dumbass. Never mind.
Dumas.
Get out of here.
Wow, some deep literature cuts here. I like it.
But yeah, but like if there was no Winston, like I do kind of want to imagine what that movie would like, and if I would like it as much. Like
I feel like you wouldn't, because there wouldn't have been that audience insert.
The audience, okay.
Because you got to have.
Because like
you can't just have 3 guys who know everything running around. Like that's not interesting to watch.
I mean, look at us right now.
Right.
Like, are you saying we're missing a 4th person?
I think so. I think that's true.
Now we're good.
We're good. Where's Kay? He's at work.
He'll be our Winston.
Oh my God, Kay's our Winston.
I don't know Kay. Do I know Kay?
It's the letter after
J.
E, F, J, J, K. Yeah, J.
You probably seen him at the office.
Probably. But yeah, I think the interesting part about the 3 guys in the first half of the movie is that they are the smart guys, but they're still trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
And then you bring in Winston, and then they already kind of know what's going on, but they're still trying to figure it out. But then they get to explain to him what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a great line, like you mentioned. I'll believe if you pay me, I'll believe anything you want. And then he's just along for the ride. And I think it just makes it so much more interesting.
And then there's that great scene too where he's with Ray and they're driving on the on one of the bridges and they're talking about revelations and they chat with God. That's a really good scene too.
Is that from the first one or is that from the second one?
It's from the first one.
Yeah. Another scene that
getting mixed up.
Yeah. Another scene that I feel like I really appreciate too was when they get dragged into court.
Yeah.
That's from the first one, right? Yeah, that's from the first one. When they get dragged into the court.
Well, they get dragged into the mayor's office.
The mayor's office.
Court is part 2.
Because the court is in part 2.
Oh, that is part 2.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of part 2.
That's the opening to part 2 because it's with the 2 executed brothers who start flying around.
But they do go to jail in part 1.
Oh yeah, they do. Okay, and the mayor comes and bails them out because everything's gone to shit. Okay, yeah, you're right.
What's his name? The actor, the redhead dude, who is
Walter Peck.
Walter Peck.
William Atherton, I believe his name is.
Yeah, but that is a great line when he calls him dickless or something, and then he's like, "It's true,
man
Your
has
Honor.
No dick.
It's true, Your Honor.
This man has no dick."
I love
and that might have been why you thought it was a court scene because they keep referring to the mayor as Your Honor.
Yeah, there you go.
But
and they got that. They have that priest in there too. Like, what is this? Is this the end of the world?
Yeah,
yeah.
And also kind of talking about what we've mentioned in the other shows in the past. I feel like Ghostbusters 2 I saw more on TV than Ghostbusters 1.
Oh, really? For once, it was me part 1 more than part 2.
Really? Yeah, for me, it was part 2 more than 1. I don't know why, but it was.
I saw part 1 a lot more than part 2 because growing up, we didn't have it. Like, we didn't buy it on VHS. We just taped it off TV. And that's what I watched.
I was too broke to tape stuff.
Well, this is a good segue into the sequel talk. Part 2 was... For me, it's on the bottom of the Ghostbusters movies, not counting the 2016 one because that's separate. But in the main storyline, part 2 could have been the best sequel to it. But everything was because they had the whole cast, the whole crew, and everything.
Right.
But it just was nowhere near as good as the first one. And they did a lot of questionable story changes. Like Dana had a kid with some other guy, which was probably that music guy.
The violinist or whatever.
Yeah, all this weird stuff, and then they make Jalene's hair look all weird, I guess, to match the real Ghostbusters cartoon that was popular at the time, and then she's banging Lewis, so it's just really weird.
Well, and that was a big thing, and it was kind of what happened to the Batman franchise after Batman Returns, because all of a sudden the studio realizes, hey, kids love this.
Yeah.
So we need to make a movie that's more kid-friendly, because you can't have ghosts giving blowjobs to Dan Aykroyd in a kids movie. You can't, or you're not supposed to, at least.
There we go.
I guess you can do anything you want, but so that was a big thing where they were like, "Oh, we need to They made the movie; it got really popular. They made the cartoon, which I used to watch as a kid.
Love it.
And then they were like, "Oh, this is huge with kids. We need to make Ghostbusters 2 right now to get them to give us all their money, and we need to make it kid friendly." So that's what they did. So, so that's why it's not quite as, I'm going to say, clever as the first movie. It doesn't necessarily need to have adult humor in it to be clever, but I think they dumbed it down a little bit.
Yeah. For sure.
And I really
like Ghostbusters 2.
I like it.
Really like Ghostbusters.
Me too.
I don't love it, but I like it.
I don't love it, but I like it. And I really do like how in the beginning of the movie, they really showed how Ghostbusters, whatever that was, that died out and everybody kind of went on their own way. And it ended up becoming franchised because that's usually that's what happened with all 90s movies. It dies out, but then it gets franchised and it still kills in the franchise. We were talking about this earlier today. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. There hasn't been a sequel, but the movie was great, small niche, but it's still franchised like fucking crazy merch and everything.
Yeah,
and
favorite
that's
movie
what
of all time.
And that's what happened with Ghostbusters too. In the movie, they showed that now we're doing birthday parties and we're a gimmick. We're not an actual serious thing anymore.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, which was really, that was a very clever point, is to kind of shine a light on the whole, franchising, merchandising part of what happens to shit like that, in that, oh, now the Ghostbusters show up at kids' birthday parties and stuff, that was
it felt real
a
to
critique
me.
of, capitalism, and blah, blah, blah.
I think story purposes, though, for part 2, they're doing kids parties because they got shut down to stop being Ghostbusters.
They had to stop, and also all the ghosts kind of like went away.
Which is another reason why like it felt so weird, because at the end of part 1 they saved the city, and then they kind of explained in a couple lines like, oh, we got sued by every city in the state and all that, so that's why they were doing kids parts and stuff.
Yeah.
So it really ruins the momentum that was left from the first one.
But it also left it open for them to kind of start from the beginning and bring the crew back together, and that band reunion.
That is an aspect to it, because you can't start off the sequel with everything's great.
Yeah,
like I guess you could.
You can.
It's a comeback story, right?
That feels more like a part 3 storyline, though.
Oh, that's true.
But we didn't get a part 3.
We did called Afterlife, and I loved it.
But it's not Ghostbusters 3. It's Afterlife.
It's the third one.
It
is, but it's still in the same storyline.
Yeah.
Egon, he died.
Oh, I just love that he was still the main character of it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Afterlife?
We're moving to sequel stuff now?
I think we can move on from part 2.
Yeah, we're still talking about sequels.
But we can move on from part 2. So did you guys watch Afterlife?
Yes, I did.
Yes. It took me a while to watch it. I mean, it's just I have a long ass list and it fell through, but I did watch it and I really did enjoy it, and it really made
emotional.
It was really emotional, and I love it because there has been some like old time sequel movies where it's like one of the actors have passed away and they just don't bring him up again, or it's just a small mention. This person, they actually brought him back. He was back from the dead in a way. He really was. And
they hit his face cleverly too.
And it really did hit a heartstring. I mean, because he was like one of my favorite characters. He really was.
Well, and I think I saw it in the theater because I was like, more Ghostbusters. Nice. And to my shame, I'm just poor, so I didn't see Frozen Empire yet.
I haven't seen it either.
But I'm gonna have to wait for that to come out streaming.
Same.
But I wanted to, and everybody that I know that likes Ghostbusters has liked it.
Yeah.
And everything I saw in the trailer, I was like,
Art won't shut up about it.
Nice.
Frozen Empire. It was. I loved it.
Well, everything I saw in the trailers, the visuals looked consistent with. At first, I was like,
haven't seen the
hell
trailer.
Is all this Frozen shit? Like, why is it all getting?
Let it go.
Everything's getting frozen. And then exactly. And then they showed a few of the ghosts in the trailer, and I was like, okay, visually this looks consistent with the classic, as did Afterlife.
Yeah.
And the big problem was, I know Harold had been working on like a third Ghostbusters movie script, and then of course his untimely death. And how are you gonna do another Ghostbuster movie without Egon Spengler?
Yeah.
And that, I think, probably pushed it a while too, because it's like, how do you do this? And I thought that in Afterlife, it was a really creative way, and the whole story is about Egon Spengler without him being in most of it.
About him helping from the
afterlife.
And I love that they brought everybody back.
They brought everybody back, and it wasn't necessarily a passing of the torch. It was a collaboration between the original and the new cast of kids,
which I really appreciate.
I do too.
Yeah.
And then at the end, of course, they used CGI and AI to have Harold Ramis's character come back as a ghost. Spoiler alert.
Didn't say a word, and the tears were flowing.
Yeah. And of course that calls into question all this. Oh, we're using people's images, but his family signed off on it.
Yeah.
And I think specifically because it was a Ghostbusters movie, like they're not just going to do that for anybody.
And also the way that they signed it off, it wasn't like, they weren't taking advantage of his character or anything, trying to make money. It felt more like a memorial to him.
It did. I mean, they were still trying to make money, but
they were. But it felt like a memorial, something that like
it was a very nice tribute.
Exactly.
Tribute, that's the word I was saying.
Tribute. Yeah, that's the word. It was a good tribute, which like I really appreciate. It wasn't just a story. It was a tribute.
Because if you are going to resurrect this franchise. Yeah. If you are going to resurrect this franchise and keep it going and keep it connected to the original, you have to find a way, because Harold Ramis is not with us anymore, you have to find a way to tie up his character's arc. And I thought they did it really, really well. And now his like unfinished business is over at the end of Afterlife, and so he can disappear, and the rest of
can pass on.
Yeah, exactly. The rest of the characters can move on forward into the franchise storylines.
So refresh my memory. The kids in Afterlife were his grandkids, right?
Yes. Finn from Stranger Things.
So a person, Egon being asexual, like you mentioned, like who the hell did he bang?
We still don't know.
That's another thing. Yeah,
Janine.
It might have been. I don't know.
They never really confirmed it. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Like who the hell banged him?
Multiple.
I like
because he has more than one kid. So.
I like how
he has one kid.
Wait, one kid?
The mom.
The mom is his daughter,
but she has multiple kids.
And she has multiple.
And we don't know who their dad is.
Damn.
And we don't know who her mom is.
Absent fathers.
I like how the spoiler is we don't know. Spoiler alert, we don't know.
Well, I think the spoiler is that you don't know.
Right.
So if you're expecting to know, you're not going to know.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like I like how the spoiler alert is literally nothing. No information whatsoever.
No information.
But yeah, Egon got it on.
Apparently at some point, obviously he had to have. But let's move on really quickly. Let's take a sidestep onto the 2016 Ghostbusters.
We have to talk about that. We have to.
Haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Answer the Call?
No.
I know it's not officially called Answer the Call, but that's how they kind of differentiate it from the other ones.
That's the female one with
the all-female Ghostbuster cast.
Like, I didn't watch it because I'm like, oh, it's all women Ghostbusters. I didn't care. I'm just like, it's not tied into the original storyline, so I'm like, I'm all right. But all the females involved are really funny people.
It's something that I didn't touch it for me. Like it didn't feel like a Ghostbuster.
Can we just not use the term the females? Because that makes me feel like we're being weird masculine, hyper masculine supremacists who refer to each other as king.
What's the best term for it? Because
women. Let's just say women.
The women, the all women
comedians.
Comedians.
But yeah, I saw it when it came out, and I didn't know. I thought maybe this is connected to the original universe. It ended up being a complete reboot, or a complete remake, even. But I thought, you had Kristen Wiig, you had Kate McKinnon, you had. I'm brain farting on the other names. Intern. I mean, they were all, again, it was all SNL.
And Hemsworth was
Chris Hemsworth was the Janine.
And it was directed by the guy who did Bridesmaids. So on paper, it should have been a really funny movie.
And I
love Bridesmaids.
And personal opinion, I think it was a really funny movie, and I liked it a lot. I think the problem was you go in expecting it to be in the same Ghostbusters universe as the original, and it's not, and the comedy is slightly different.
Melissa McCarthy and Leslie
Jones, all completely fucking brilliant comedians.
Comedians.
I think you can refer to them as comedians or comedians, but all completely brilliant in their comedy. Mm-hmm. And go ahead and kill that last 2 drops out of that bottle, Art.
What are we drinking, guys?
A decade. Monkey Shoulder. Monkey Shoulder. Is it a whiskey or a bourbon?
Well, technically it's a whiskey. It's a scotch.
Oh, it's a scotch. It's not a peaty scotch. Otherwise, I wouldn't drink it. I don't like peat. I don't like smoky. I don't like drinking a bonfire, personally. That's why I don't drink mezcal either.
Sometimes I'm into it. Sometimes.
Now, I'll be the audience insert here. What the hell are you talking about?
So peat is actually a bog moss that they use in the process of treating the barrels that they use to age scotch in. Peat is a moss. They burn it. They actually put it on top of a fire so that it smokes the wood that they use for the barrels in aging scotch. You started giggling when I said smoking wood.
Smoking wood.
Sorry.
And so when you have a really what's called a peaty scotch, it's those scotches that taste really smoky.
Yeah.
And that's the peat in the scotch.
Are there like any common brands of scotch that do that method?
A lot of the big names. A lot of them do.
Big names.
But Monkey Shoulder, at least this particular brew, is not one of those. I could do an entire series of podcasts on liquor history. So I will try not to go off on a tangent right now.
Oh man, but I'm so interested. But okay.
We'll save that for another.
But yeah, there's a lot to it. But yeah, peat is going to be that really strong smoky flavor, and a lot of the big brands they they have that. I mean, it's a class. It's like it's very old style for Scotch making, and it's like, you know, you didn't have soft drinks, you didn't have sodas, you didn't have Pepsi and Coke. You had water and wine and beer and liquors that were very strong, and so you did things to them during the aging process to make them have certain flavors and tastes.
See, that doesn't sound like a bad beverage menu for me.
True.
I just need some caffeine in there. We're all set.
There you go.
Sounds good. But yeah,
So going back,
quick little whiskey history.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That's what we're drinking to a decade tonight. The Monkey Shoulder. And
this podcast is not sponsored by Monkey Shoulder.
Not at all.
no, but we'll take
could
some money
be.
if they want to throw it at us.
Yeah. Or just some extra bottles.
But the comedy. So back to Ghostbusters, quote unquote, Answer the Call.
Answer the Call,
which is the unofficial subtitle to the film.
Okay.
That is the all women
cast.
Comedian.
or the
Comedian.
all women Ghostbusters. And for what it was, I liked it.
Yeah.
It was definitely a slightly different style of comedy, but again, it was all Saturday Night Live people that came together to do this. It missed some of the horror aspect of the original Ghostbusters.
Definitely.
They definitely had scary ghosts, but the opening scene where they encounter a ghost, and I haven't watched this since 2016.
Yeah.
But the opening scene, it's one of those things where the ghost is coming up and it's scary, and then it's like, oh, I have to fart or something, something like that. Like, it wasn't a fart, but it was like something weird like that where the ghost had to stop and be like, I have to think about that for a second. That kind of comedy. And that was where it tipped me off, where I'm like, oh, this is a different kind of, like, the ghosts are in on the joke in this one. Whereas in Ghostbusters, the ghosts are absolutely not in on the joke.
Mm-hmm.
They are fucking ghosts, and they are scary. And so that was one thing that I had to adjust to when I watched this, is because then they did bring in like Ernie Hudson came in for a cameo.
I remember,
original.
original.
And they had a reference to Harold Ramis, and they had
Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd came in for a cameo.
Bill Murray.
No, I don't think Bill Murray.
I don't think Bill was in that one.
No.
as I
Okay.
recall.
Yeah.
They didn't get him.
There's only
for that,
two of
but,
them.
Yeah, but in the background of one of the scenes, there's a bronze bust, and it's Harold Ramis.
Yeah, that I do remember that. Yeah.
And so it is funny in its own right, but again, it's
own right.
It's the internet trolls that were like, "Oh, women Ghostbusters, blah blah blah. I don't like it," you know, and that's what kind of tanked it. I would love to see all of those actresses come back and make cameos in the new franchise.
That'd be kind of cool.
That'd be kind of cool.
I would think that was great. But yeah, I liked it. It's not like my favorite movie I watch all the time, but I thought it was good for what it was, and I thought it was a good attempt at restarting the franchise.
I agree with that.
But I do. But I think the other thing is, right now, and for the last decade and a half, probably, we've been in this, especially with us as millennials getting into our late 30s, early 40s. We're the ones that are spending the money that we don't have on entertainment and media and all that kind of stuff. And we want our nostalgia. And so, that's what they've been trying to capitalize on for the last 15 years in filmmaking, is we want to recapture that nostalgia. And they thought they were doing that by doing a whole new Ghostbusters franchise, and it didn't work. Now they bring back the original Ghostbusters franchise, like they've been bringing back Michael Keaton as the original Batman,
Beetlejuice,
as Beetlejuice, or the Blade Runner sequel bringing back Harrison Ford, and Indiana Jones.
It's like easy money. It's like easy money because it's already there.
Exactly, it's easy money for the studios because they're like, well, we'll just bring back the original people, and they're old now, but you still want to watch them because it's connected to that thing from when we were kids. And that's what they're capitalizing on now. And I think that's part of the reason why the women Ghostbusters movie did not hit quite the way that they thought it would. Yeah. But I like it.
It was fun when I watched it. It was fun. It's just, I felt like there was just something off. It didn't, like I said, it didn't feel like a Ghostbusters movie.
There was that disconnect.
And I feel like also, I think from one of the things you mentioned is just how you said how the ghosts seemed like they were in on the joke.
The ghosts were part of the joke.
And I think that was also what made me feel like it wasn't a Ghostbusters movie. Cause like one of the things that I love, and you've mentioned to me when we've talked about Spider-Man, is that a lot of his humor and his banter and his fight talk, like his humor, a lot of it was just him coping with the situation and him making these jokes. And I felt like that's kind of how it was in Ghostbusters. These guys making these jokes and kind of like coping with the situation. That's why the ghosts weren't involved in it.
Yeah.
That whole situation. Like, and I think that's what kind of like, again, like how you said, the ghosts were in the joke and it kind of ruined it.
What makes Ghostbusters funny is that the people are funny, the ghosts are not.
Exactly. Yes.
Once the ghosts are in on the joke, it takes something away from it.
Right. Yeah. You need some sort of seriousness in there.
It's too goofy. Yeah, it's too goofy. It's way too goofy. And I think that's what it was. I felt like the movie was way too goofy that you lost what the horror, the funny horror of it.
I did appreciate that Chris Hemsworth character was a complete himbo. Like he literally, it was flipping the script and being like, here's the guy for you. Here's the dumbass guy for you to ogle at. And again, I don't know. Did you guys see the Barbie movie?
I did.
Yes.
I really liked the Barbie movie.
I did.
I don't know how you guys felt about it, but
it was good.
I think anybody who comes out and is like, oh, the Barbie movie was just an anti-man movie, that completely missed the point. The whole, was that my chair?
I think that was my chair.
Oh,
my chair?
The whole point of it was to portray the men like we've portrayed women for a long time in film and television, and then explore why that's not okay for anyone. And yeah, we can have a laugh about it, and we can say, oh, here's Chris Hemsworth as a complete like musclehead himbo character that is only there for you to ogle at, and that's it. I can appreciate that, and I liked that, because as long as you're flipping the script to all women Ghostbusters, why not do that as well? And so I can appreciate that. We can do a whole other show on the Barbie movie.
Absolutely.
Funniest thing about the Barbie movie is that the only thing that people talk about is the Ken song.
I know, that's the thing. I saw like a satire thing was like before the Oscars. It was like, who played Ken?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling.
I was going to say Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, that's not right.
Gosling's
Wrong
like
Ryan.
but it was the like pinnacle of oogly-eyed.
Yeah, but it was like Ryan Gosling nominated as best director for Barbie movie. And it
Wait,
was like,
what?
Okay, yeah, it was a joke, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like, that was the point they were making. It was like, everybody's just talking about Ken and blah, blah, blah. Brilliant movie. But
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, moving on.
Going back to Ghostbusters and sequel talk, would you count this as kind of a sequel? Do you remember Casper?
Yeah.
Where that little bit where he's like, who are you going to call? Somebody else.
And he's got like a mustache, which was always
creepy,
weird
like,
to
porn
me.
stash to him. Probably from that ghost blowjob.
Well, they were I think it was just like a last minute idea. They're like, dudes, what if we got Dan Aykroyd to come in here and do a cameo as a Ghostbuster? And he happened to have a mustache at the time. And he's like, I'm not shaving mustache.
Nope.
The Henry Cavill mustache where he couldn't shave it in Justice League.
So they had to CGI'd it out.
And then also another Ghostbusters sequel, which I actually consider the real part 3, is the video game.
Oh, yeah.
The 2009 video game?
The 2009 video game,
It was so good. Everyone
Spirits Unleashed? Or no?
It was just called Ghostbusters.
It was just called Ghostbusters?
Spirits Unleashed is one that came out a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But this one, it's like, it's a real, it feels like a true sequel. You have everyone back. They're referencing stuff. But the only reason why it's not a part 3 is because at the end of that Ghostbusters game, you fight Shandor. He's the main villain. But in Afterlife, Shandor, played by J.K. Simmons, he dies in a second. So they can't be the same. It can't be like a real part 3.
Right.
So,
can't be a real part 3.
But at the time, it was my part 3, and it's still really well written, and the game itself is still awesome.
I think the thing is with video games is they're such a great medium for storytelling and truly interactive storytelling, obviously. But the thing is, the difference between video games and movies, you can legitimately create a sequel to a movie in a video game that fits with the story and completes it.
Absolutely.
But they are really not as widely, I mean, video games are everywhere, obviously, but they're not as widely accessible to the general public, because not everybody plays video games, and it's a commitment. You got to commit a long time to playing a video game to get through the story. And people on the, people who aren't gamers aren't going to do that. Mm-hmm. And they're much more willing to go sit in a theater for 2 hours or rent it online and watch it in their living room for 2 hours than play a video game for a couple months,
But now you're running into, at least for the younger generation, you're running into Twitch streamers where like now
that too.
Where now people who can't afford the game or don't want to spend the time, they'll watch a streamer play it.
How did we turn watching somebody else playing a video game into a business?
I don't know, but I'm all for it.
So I get all that, but I guess what I was really trying to say, I was just trying to say that video game was really good. I loved it.
It really was. No, like,
and what I'm saying is it's brilliant to be able to do that. It's just not as widely accessible, unfortunately, because not everybody's going to do it. So.
Bunch of nerds.
Nerds.
What's next, Detective? What's next on our list of things to talk about?
Well, we got some trivia talk, but I think we kind of already went through that with Winston that was supposed to be there in the beginning of the movie, but only ended up halfway. But did you guys know that apparently Michael Keaton turned down the roles of Venkman and Spangler? Can you imagine a Ghostbusters movie with Michael Keaton as Venkman or Egon?
No, I don't think I can.
I think he could have brought something interesting to Spangler, but it would absolutely have not been the same movie.
Right.
I think I think it would have been good, but it would have been very different. Venkman.
I don't know. I can't imagine Keaton in a comedic
And this is
role.
1984, so this is like around the time Mr. Mom came out, or maybe the movie came a little bit after. But
he was a comedian.
He was still up and coming.
I never watched that movie, so yeah.
So, Mr. Mom is great.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it, Mr. Mom's great. And that's the thing. Michael Keaton is a comedian.
He started off as a comedian.
He is a comedian. And his first movies, Mr. Mom and what was it, Bachelor Party or something?
Yeah.
Or like those were all comedies.
Damn, I don't think I've seen any of those.
He was a stand-up comic.
So that's why when he was cast as Batman, it was a huge controversy.
People were pissed.
The same shit we see nowadays. It's been around for decades.
Yeah.
People
just
were
pre-internet.
Pissed. Yeah. But yeah, that would have been wild to see Keaton in the Ghostbusters universe.
That'd have been pretty cool.
Another thing that we didn't mention on our other 40th anniversary show is Dan Aykroyd's cameo in Indiana Jones.
That's right. He leads them to the airplane.
Yeah.
Oh, nice tie-in. Sir.
And I was watching it and I'm like, I had totally forgotten about that. And it's like a 30-second scene.
Right.
And you don't even really see him. It's dark outside. It's kind of a wide shot the whole time. And I'm just like, is that fucking Dan Aykroyd?
I didn't even know that.
Now I got to go watch that.
And again, it was a thing of like, Dan Aykroyd was like, hey, can I be in this? And they're like, sure, we'll throw you in. Like,
how can you say no to Dan Aykroyd?
I want to get to that level of entertainment where I'm an actor, I'm a comedian. I want to get to that level where they're just like shooting a dope ass movie that I'm like interested in, but I'm not working on. And I'm just like, I call up the director or the producer. I'm like, hey, can I just get a weird cameo in this movie? Like Daniel Craig in the Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Right. He was the interrogation.
He was a fucking stormtrooper. You didn't even see his face. He's just like, can I dress up as a stormtrooper and be in it? And
yeah,
like, sure.
Simon Pegg in there too.
Simon Pegg, yeah.
Simon Pegg. Yeah.
I'm like, what the? I want to get to that level.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Just show up and have fun with it. I like that.
What are some of your favorite quotes that you still use today from Ghostbusters?
Got slimed.
I got slimed.
I got slimed.
I like it when he calls, and there's a debate about this term too. And I'm going to fully acknowledge that before I use it. But the term spook or spooky developed from a racist origin to describe black people. And then it in turn over the years got moved into things that are scary, ghosts and witches and vampires. They're spooky, But it originated as like you wanted to be afraid of black people. That's why they called them spooks. And that's how spooky became a term. But when he refers to Dana's apartment is because it's built out of the materials and on the spot that it is, he says she's got the penthouse suite in the corner of Spook Central. And I've always thought that was funny in the context of thinking of spook as a scary, spooky thing,
Right. I always thought the term spook meant like like
a G-man.
Agent, no, yeah, an
Yeah.
agent. Like
Well, it was used for that too.
yeah,
But
okay.
it's always in something that's shady and weird.
Something shady and weird.
But yeah, and unfortunately, and I have no place to speak on this as a white guy. I'm gonna fully admit that, and Art's eyes get wide when I start talking about stuff like this on the podcast.
Oh my God.
But I'm keeping everything above board. I'm just saying I have
Yeah.
no place to speak on this
Of course.
as a white guy. But I'm also married to a woman of color, and we have kind of talked about it like spooky is such a fun term. I wish it didn't have this heritage, and it's a fun word to use for ooky, scary ghosts and goblins.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
Yeah, exactly. And so is there a way that we as a society can just decide, you know what, I don't care where it came from, we're going to use this?
Time.
I guess time.
It's time and I don't know, it's just forgetting the old terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's always the origins of it that are a problem. But I don't know. It's not for me to decide, and it's not for
So
it's up to the next generation.
yeah.
So is that your favorite quote? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, the spook, yeah, in a roundabout way, Spook Central.
Spook Central.
Another piece of trivia, if you'll allow me.
Fuck it.
The building that Dana lives in, the exterior shots of the building, not in New York City.
Yeah, a lot of it was L.A. as well.
That particular building is in Kansas City, Missouri.
That the exterior of her building?
The exterior of Dana's apartment building is in downtown Kansas City, Missouri.
How do we keep connecting to your home state?
I know, right?
Wait, Kansas City? That's in Missouri.
Well, okay, so downtown Kansas City. So the actual city limits of Kansas City are split between Kansas and Missouri, split by the Missouri River. The downtown Kansas City and where the Chiefs and the Royals play and all that kind of stuff, that is in Missouri specifically. All the Kansas parts of Kansas City are residential for the most part, and some industrial, I think. But yeah, the exterior of Dana's building in Ghostbusters is actually a building that still stands in Kansas City, Missouri. I've had too much monkey shoulder.
That's
And,
interesting.
And I've driven past it. Like, I've seen it with my own two eyes. But also filming locations. We're talking about the hotel that he gets slimed in.
The Sedgwick Hotel?
That is in downtown LA. And it is the
Ritz-Carlton?
no, Intern. What's the hotel in downtown LA?
Intern.
Just look at Ghostbusters shooting. Again, we don't have an intern.
You are going to get fired.
It's just Art's left hand with his cell phone.
Yeah, his left hand doesn't get a lot of attention.
Biltmore. It's the Biltmore Hotel. That's what it is.
We need to do like a Hollywood like tour of all these like, movies.
Art didn't even look it up. I just remembered it. I just want that on record.
He's checking.
Oh, I found it. Yeah, it is the Biltmore.
Yeah.
Biltmore.
It's the Biltmore Hotel, which I've actually stayed at. I've stayed at the Biltmore Hotel.
Oh,
and
really?
there
Were you slimed?
I was not slimed, but there are legends of, I think there's like the fourth floor. There's a little girl ghost that haunts the fourth floor or something. I did not stay on the fourth floor, unfortunately. But
What about the Cecil Hotel?
could you ask?
I have not stayed at the Cecil.
Isn't that mostly just crackheads?
And the ghost of
well,
Richard Ramirez.
They've like upgraded the Cecil to like a nice hostel now.
Isn't that like split? Like half of it is an actual proper hotel. The
I think
other
so.
half is
Yeah,
still,
something like that.
It's still
Kind of run down and
yeah, like
crackheads.
Just
what's
don't
the
drink
term
from
of
the water.
My homie, yeah, right.
Oh my
There
God,
might be
that's
there might be a woman in the water tank. That's another episode we can do. And I actually one of my guys, Jim from the Con Guy podcast, used to live across the street from the Cecil Hotel, and he's like obsessed with it.
Really?
He loves spooky. Well, there it is again. The term spooky. He loves scary, haunted shit like that.
Awesome.
Where were we? Oh, but the
Quotes.
Biltmore.
Oh yeah,
The Biltmore Hotel, yeah. So they filmed that whole scene. It's supposed to be a hotel in downtown New York. It's actually in downtown Los Angeles.
So the interior or the exterior is the Biltmore?
The interior is the Biltmore.
The interior. Okay.
I don't. Do they show an exterior of the hotel?
When they pull up.
That might also be the exterior of the Biltmore, as I recall.
Okay.
Now that I think of it, because it's not a wide shot. It's a wide shot of the car,
But not like the
pulling
whole
up,
building.
But it's not like the whole building or
Yeah.
the whole of downtown.
It's like the lower level.
But yeah, that's the Biltmore in Los Angeles, and they shot a lot of this in Los Angeles. and obviously B-roll footage in Kansas City for some reason. But it's a cool looking building.
At least it's not Canada.
I think they did it because it's a very unique looking building.
Yeah.
And they needed something that looked like it was built by an architect who was obsessed with the occult. And, and that's why it was the way it was. Because, there's the whole thing and there's the storyline in there. Of the architect worshiped Zool, or not really, but what I'm saying. He worshipped Gozer, the Gozerian, and he built the building out of this special type of alloy and all this kind of stuff to conduct the energy of the spirit and all that kind of stuff.
Choose your form of the destructor.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow.
Is that your favorite quote?
It's one of them, yeah. I say that every night before bed.
Oh my God.
To your wife?
Oh my
Sometimes.
God.
Oh.
Sometimes it's just me.
You just look down in your pants and you're like, choose the form of your destructor.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, I do like if somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Yeah, there we go.
One of my favorite lines.
Are you a god?
Are you a god?
And Venkman's like nodding, like, say yes. And he's like,
say-
no.
No.
Then die.
What else? What other great lines are there? Is that
I
what
get-
we're on right now? Great
Yeah.
lines?
Yeah.
Favorite lines?
Sure, Art's got like 20 of them.
I got like a lot. I already mentioned it, but I'll say it
throw 'em
again.
out there.
I like spores, molds, or I collect spores, molds, and
I collect
fungus.
spores, molds,
And then at one point he's like, I'm always serious.
yeah.
I say that all the time.
Well, that's great because, like you said before, Harold Ramis never smiles.
Except in part 2, but yeah.
In part 2, he does, and in Afterlife, when his ghost looks over, he smiles at
Yeah.
them, which is whew.
So
Again,
3 times in
I'm going to
total.
start crying right now. Art is weeping uncontrollably at this moment.
He's gone too soon.
He was gone too soon. You know what the last movie I saw him was?
Was it year 1?
Year 1, yeah.
You know what? I actually really liked that movie. It was stupid fun.
It's stupid.
Wait,
It's
what
and
role was he?
bedazzled.
What role?
Oh, he was a director.
He was a director. of
but
the
he
directed
movie?
also
one.
played, didn't he play like the Hebrew Jacob or something like that? Or
I don't remember him
He-
seeing him in there.
he's in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Harold Ramis plays the father of the family.
No,
Yeah.
the one where they share the bed with, and it's that weird sibling brother.
I can't remember.
Who's,
Look
like,
it up.
farting.
Intern. Art's left hand. Look it up with the
You only
phone.
cut the tip. No, that's the guy from Family Matters.
Yeah,
But it's also
No, not
like
Family, no,
those movies
Full
though
House.
are
Full House.
it's like that one and Your Highness, like just the fucking goofy ass stoner comedy movies.
I love those. I
like
miss
they're
those.
fun. They're not good, but
Your-
they're fun.
Your Highness is great.
he also directed the remake of Bedazzled with Brendan
Brendan Fraser
Yeah,
and Elizabeth Hurley.
that's right.
Oh shit! I didn't know he directed that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Great
that's
director.
great.
He was a great director.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh,
No, he was a great director, especially for comedy.
Yeah.
he played. Oh, he also directed Stripes with Bill Murray, which
Yeah.
helped him get him in there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So in year 1, he played Adam. I do not remember.
Oh,
who
he
that
played
is.
Adam, the first man. But it was Adam later after they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
Oh,
and
shit.
and so he has Cain and Abel. That's what it was. He was the father. He was Adam and there was Eve and then they had Cain and Abel.
Oh, okay.
And
Where's
so-
where's
With
your
Paul
brother? Where's your brother?
And fucking was it David Cross, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Small
David Cross.
Soldiers.
That was David
That's
Cross.
so funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
David Cross.
He was Kane, right? Yeah.
And Scary Movie 2 in the wheelchair.
Oh my god.
I can do it myself.
Anyway,
very
Ghostbusters.
noted. Very
On
noted.
the list.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Do you guys think Ghostbusters 1984 has aged well?
Yes, absolutely. You could still enjoy it till this day, and it's perfect.
I agree. I think so. And yeah, despite all the things that we talked about that are quote unquote problematic, none of them are really that problematic. Like in the sense of understanding like, oh, you didn't bring the black guy in until halfway through the movie and he plays the Joe Everyman. Well, there's reasons behind that. There's both production reasons and story reasons for why he is the way he is. And that actually elevates his character.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that kind of stuff. But especially in the context of like, I will say watching, for example, watching the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels makes the Star Wars prequels better movies. I think the original Ghostbusters is an absolutely magnificent film. And what they're doing with the new sequels, Afterlife and Frozen Empire, is only serving to make the original better.
Pretty
in
much,
my
yeah.
opinion.
I can agree with that. Ernie, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's still fun to this day. What I love the most, absolutely, about it that I can actually, I think we talked about this the other day. You really know when a movie still holds up when the youngest generation still absolutely loves it, and that's why watching your son being such a fan of it, and every Halloween dressing up. Wait, who's does he do Venkman? Or
he loves Venkman. So
just watching him do it, just I already know it's like this movie.
For the last few years, my son has been pretty obsessed with Ghostbusters. That's amazing. It's funny because what got him into the movie was the song. He loved the song first, and he kept singing it, and then we stumbled across the music video, and he got more into it than we watched the movie. So a lot of credit.
You're doing something right with that kid.
Thank you. A lot of credit goes.
You're doing a lot of things wrong, but you're doing something right.
I'll take something. But one of the good things about Ghostbusters is the song, the soundtrack. Not just the Ray Parker Jr. theme song, but the score from the rest of the score, Elmer Bernstein. All of it is so quirky and cool and like kind of creepy.
Well, and Art, you know me, I love a good orchestral soundtrack.
That's right.
We've done a show on it.
A couple of episodes, yeah.
So I will say the controversy surrounding Ray Parker Jr.
where he got sued by Huey
Lewis in the News. I Want a New Drug is basically the same song.
Really?
Like music wise?
And they originally wanted to get Huey Lewis in the News to write the song for Ghostbusters, and they opted out for whatever reason. I can't remember. And then they got Ray Parker Jr. and he wrote that dun 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 dun. It's the exact same line from Huey Lewis's "I Want a New Drug," and they sued them. But I will tell you what: while "I Want a New Drug" is a famous song, so to speak, the Ghostbusters theme is way bigger.
Way bigger. So what did they take the hit, the lawsuit, or what happened?
I think it was like a settlement. I think
they settled. Yeah.
So
I'm gonna have to listen to.
So a lot of credit for the success of the movie comes from the song, which apparently Ray Parker Jr. got the inspiration from watching like a commercial late at night, and then so he kind of linked it to that scene in the movie where they're doing the commercial, and that's where you get the "Who you gonna call?
We believe you.
We're ready to believe you."
That's what it was.
That's another quotable thing,
right?
We're ready to believe you.
So it's one of those movies that it's pretty much perfect, like Back to the Future. It's so good from a technical standpoint, and then the music,
from
and
a
the
writing
score.
aspect. Both Back to the Future and Ghostbusters are pretty perfect as far as efficiency in writing a story.
Right. So again, a lot of credit should go to Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters theme song, which still stands, and everyone still sings it, and they know it to this day.
Everybody loves it.
Absolutely.
Who doesn't love the Ghostbusters theme?
If you don't,
nobody.
Then you're crazy.
Hey, bustin' makes me feel good.
It does. It does make art feel good.
Say that one more time.
Bustin' makes me feel good.
Okay.
What did you think I said?
No, that's exactly what I heard.
It's from the song.
Yeah.
You guys are ridiculous.
Anywho, well, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let's take another cheers, even though our glasses are pretty much empty.
I still got a little.
I got a swig.
I got nothing. I got a rock.
I got a rock.
I got a rock.
I got a popcorn ball.
So happy 40th anniversary to Ghostbusters.
Cheers.
I was a little drop here. All right, guys, thanks for listening and watching. Make sure you hit a thumbs up and subscribe to Movie Melee, and check all of us on our socials in the description below. Once again, I am Detective Artemis.
I'm Journey.
And I am old buddy Ben Cleaver, and we will see you next time.
No. You don't come in here and take the sign-off line from me, okay? The line is, we drink, what is it? We drink and we watch things. I can't read.
Art cannot read. He absolutely cannot. He learned to one time, then he took a hit to the head from a donkey, and
Yeah. Now
TJ is a nightmare for me.
Yeah, now he uses Siri to read everything for him.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
Hail Satan.